The Texas plains stretched out, an endless canvas of ochre and dust, after the storm had finally relented. It had been a brutal one, even by Texas standards, leaving a wake of uprooted mesquite trees and a thick film of red dirt coating everything in sight. Ethan Maddox, a figure as weathered and solitary as the land itself, rode through the aftermath, his gaze sweeping the horizon. He wasn't expecting to find anything, just checking his fences after the tempest's fury. But then he saw her. She lay amidst a pile of debris, a splash of color against the monochrome landscape. Her clothes, though expensive, were torn and caked in mud. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and a dark stain bloomed on her temple. She was utterly out of place, like a delicate flower crushed beneath a heavy boot. The initial shock gave way to a grim assessment. Her breathing was shallow, her pulse weak. The indifference of nature, the sheer brutality of the storm, felt like a personal affront. Ethan, a man of few words and even fewer companions, felt a surge of something akin to anger, not at anyone in particular, but at the uncaring vastness that could inflict such harm. He dismounted, his movements economical and practiced. He gently checked her for other injuries, his touch surprisingly tender for a man so rough-hewn. There was no time to waste. He had to get her back to his ranch, and quickly. Despite his solitary existence, a life carved out far from the comforts and complexities of town, Ethan possessed a practical knowledge born of necessity. He knew how to mend fences, deliver calves, and treat injuries. He'd patched himself up more times than he cared to remember. With careful deliberation, he scooped her up into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, almost fragile. He settled her gently onto Ruby, his loyal horse, securing her as best he could. Then, leading Ruby by the reins, he began the slow trek back to his humble ranch. He was unaware of her true identity, of the immense wealth and power she wielded in the nearby town. He didn't know that he was carrying the richest woman in the region, Charlotte Aldridge, a name whispered with a mixture of awe and resentment. He saw only a woman in need, and he would do everything in his power to save her. The ranch was a simple affair, a testament to self-sufficiency and hard work. A small, sturdy house, a barn, and a corral, all built with his own 2 hands. He laid her down on his bed, the only bed in the house, and set about cleaning her wounds. He worked with a quiet efficiency, his brow furrowed in concentration. As the hours passed, she stirred. A faint moan escaped her lips, and her eyelids fluttered. Her eyes, when they finally opened, were clouded with confusion and pain. She looked around the unfamiliar room, her gaze settling on Ethan, a silent question in her eyes. He offered her a small, reassuring smile, but her identity remained a mystery, and the consequences of this unexpected rescue remained to be seen. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Life on the sprawling Texas plains was Ethan's sanctuary. Each sunrise painted the landscape in hues of gold and crimson, a daily masterpiece he witnessed with quiet reverence. His days were a rhythm of sun and soil, tending to his modest ranch, a testament to self-sufficiency built with calloused hands and unwavering determination. Ruby, his loyal horse, was more than just an animal. She was his confidant, his shadow, a silent partner in the dance of survival against the elements. They understood each other without words, a bond forged through shared hardship and mutual respect. Ethan's ranch, though humble, was a haven. The small, sturdy house, built from weathered wood and stone, stood as a defiant beacon against the vast emptiness. Inside, the scent of pine and leather mingled with the aroma of freshly baked bread, a simple comfort in a world that often offered none. He grew his own vegetables, raised a few chickens, and hunted sparingly, taking only what he needed. His life was a study in minimalism, a conscious rejection of the excess and noise of the modern world. He dreamed of a life of peace, of independence earned through honest labor. He yearned for the solace of the open plains, the freedom to live by his own rules, beholden to no one. But beneath the stoic exterior lay unspoken vulnerabilities, wounds inflicted by a past he preferred to keep buried. The sting of broken promises, the bitter taste of betrayal, had driven him to seek refuge in solitude. The local community, though sparsely populated, had its own customs and expectations. Ethan, with his solitary ways, was an outsider, viewed with a mixture of curiosity and respect. They admired his self-reliance, his unwavering integrity, but they also kept their distance, sensing the invisible walls he had erected around himself. He was the quiet cowboy, the man who kept to himself, a figure of both admiration and slight suspicion. In stark contrast to Ethan's humble existence was the distant, almost mythical figure of Charlotte Aldridge. Her name echoed through the region, synonymous with wealth and power. She was the richest woman in town, a titan of industry, a force to be reckoned with. Her world was one of boardrooms and business deals, of lavish parties and relentless ambition. She was a queen in her own right, ruling her empire with an iron fist and a carefully cultivated air of mystery. Her life and Ethan's were diametrically opposed, separated by an unbridgeable gulf of circumstance and choice. Before the storm, before the accident, their paths were destined to remain forever apart. Their collision was an anomaly, a twist of fate that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed fabric of their separate lives. The vastness of the Texas plains, while offering Ethan Maddox a profound sense of freedom, also served as a silent testament to the emotional scars he carried. His solitude wasn't merely a choice of independence, it was a sanctuary built brick by painful brick around a heart once too open, too trusting. Years ago, a partnership, born of shared dreams and a handshake agreement over fertile land, had soured into a bitter betrayal. A close friend, someone Ethan had considered family, had subtly manipulated land deeds, leaving Ethan with the less productive acreage and a deep, festering wound of distrust. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation, but a slow, insidious realization of broken promises, of carefully crafted lies that had unraveled his faith in human connections. He had watched as his friend's ranch flourished, built on the very foundation of Ethan's generosity and hard work, while he himself wrestled with the unforgiving soil. This injustice, quiet yet devastating, had ingrained in Ethan a profound skepticism towards the complexities of society. The cutthroat world of deals and hidden agendas felt like quicksand, threatening to swallow his very spirit. He had learned that sometimes the simplest path was the only honest one, and that true peace was found not in the fleeting promises of others, but in the steadfast loyalty of his horse and the honest toil of his hands. He remembered another instance, a town meeting where his concerns about water rights were dismissed, overridden by the louder, more influential voices, leaving him feeling invisible and unheard. These cumulative slights, subtle manipulations, and the quiet dismissals of his integrity had solidified his resolve to live a life unburdened by such deceit, a life where the only betrayals were from nature itself, and those, at least, were predictable. He sought a world where worth was measured by deeds, not words, by character, not connections. Meanwhile, Charlotte Aldridge, the woman now recovering under Ethan's roof, had navigated a world far more brutal and unforgiving, a gilded cage of power and pretense. Her immense fortune was not inherited without struggle. It was forged in the fires of relentless ambition and a constant battle against a ruthless corporate landscape. From a young age, she had witnessed the subtle yet devastating power plays within her family's empire, where loyalty was a currency to be spent and discarded. Her rise to prominence was paved with countless instances of backstabbing, veiled threats, and open sabotage from rivals and even supposed allies. She recalled a particularly vicious board meeting where a close confidant had publicly undermined her, twisting her words to discredit her vision, leaving her feeling exposed and utterly alone. There were the endless social functions, a parade of false smiles and thinly veiled manipulations, where every conversation was a negotiation, every compliment a potential trap. She had endured countless humiliations, from whispers about her gender in a male-dominated industry to outright attempts to discredit her intelligence and leadership. The profound injustice of being judged not for her capabilities, but for her position and her wealth, had forced her to build an impenetrable emotional fortress. She learned to anticipate every attack, to read between the lines of every polite interaction, and to trust no one implicitly. Her reserved persona wasn't a choice of arrogance, but a necessary shield against the constant barrage of opportunism and envy that surrounded her. She had often felt like a queen on a chessboard, powerful, yet constantly under threat, her every move scrutinized, her every vulnerability exploited. The weight of her empire was not just financial, it was an emotional burden that had isolated her profoundly. And so, their unexpected meeting on the desolate plains was not merely a twist of fate, but a profound convergence of two souls shaped by similar, albeit vastly different, forms of isolation. Both Ethan and Charlotte carried the heavy weight of past emotional wounds, weariness from a world that had, in its own way, betrayed them. Their paths, so divergent in their outward manifestations, were remarkably similar in their internal journeys of resilience and retreat. This unexpected collision held the potential to be a balm, a quiet understanding for years of unspoken pain, an opportunity for connection in lives that had learned to thrive in solitude. The quiet understanding that had begun to unfurl between Ethan and Charlotte, a delicate thread woven from shared solitude, was suddenly threatened by the intrusion of the outside world. As days bled into weeks and Charlotte slowly regained her strength within the humble confines of Ethan's ranch, the once peaceful environment began to hum with an unspoken tension. Ethan, accustomed to the rhythmic silence of his isolated life, felt it first as a subtle shift in the wind, a prickling sensation on his skin. He noticed the way Ruby, his loyal horse, would lift her head, ears twitching towards the distant horizon, long before any actual sound reached him. It started with the dust on the road, thicker than usual, suggesting more traffic. Then came the infrequent but noticeable figures on horseback, lingering a moment too long at the edge of his property, their gazes sharp and inquisitive. Word, like a wildfire across dry plains, had begun to spread through the small, tightly knit community. A mysterious woman, injured and unknown, was recuperating at Ethan Maddox's ranch, the solitary cowboy who kept to himself. The initial curiosity, a natural human trait in such a remote area, quickly morphed into something far more insidious. Neighbors, those few who lived within a day's ride, started to visit, their offers of help thinly veiled excuses to glimpse the stranger. Relatives, distant and usually indifferent, suddenly remembered their familial ties, appearing with baskets of food and an abundance of pointed questions. Even business associates from the nearest town, men Ethan usually only encountered for supplies, made the arduous journey, their faces a mixture of concern and calculating speculation. Gossip, a currency more valuable than gold in small communities, circulated with alarming speed. Whispers about Ethan's intentions, his sudden hospitality towards a woman whose background was entirely unknown, grew louder. Was she a relative? A runaway? A woman of ill repute? The stark contrast between Ethan's simple, rugged world and the implied sophistication of Charlotte's presence fueled the flames of judgment. Social pressures, unyielding and pervasive, began to press in on Ethan from all sides. The community, wary of anything that disrupted its established norms, saw their unconventional proximity as a challenge, an anomaly demanding explanation. Charlotte, still fragile but regaining her formidable composure, only exacerbated the misunderstandings. Her guarded nature, a shield honed by years in a cutthroat world, was easily misconstrued as arrogance or secretiveness by the plain-speaking, open-hearted folk of the plains. She rarely spoke, her answers clipped and evasive, further deepening the mystery and feeding the town's collective judgment. Ethan watched her, understanding her need for privacy, yet feeling the increasing weight of the scrutiny her silence invited. His cherished solitude, the very fabric of his existence, felt invaded, suffocated. Every ride into town for supplies became an interrogation, every casual conversation a veiled attempt to extract information. The easy camaraderie he once shared with the few people he encountered was replaced by wary glances and probing questions. He felt the constant weight of prying eyes, the invisible threads of speculation tightening around him. The pressure mounted, a relentless, oppressive force as he navigated the delicate situation. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that their unconventional proximity challenged every social norm, every unspoken rule of their world. This wasn't merely about two people, it was about two vastly different lives colliding under the harsh, unforgiving glare of public opinion. Ethan, who had always found peace in the vast emptiness of the plains, now felt a claustrophobic sense of confinement. The ranch, his sanctuary, no longer offered the same solace. The air itself seemed thick with unspoken accusations and veiled judgments. He found himself constantly explaining, defending, or simply enduring the uncomfortable silences. This profound emotional suffocation built steadily, day by day, until it became an unbearable burden. He knew, deep in his bones, that something had to give. This fragile, strained peace could not last. A rupture was inevitable, a breaking point looming on the horizon, threatening to shatter the delicate equilibrium he had so carefully maintained. And perhaps the nascent connection he had found with the mysterious woman in his home. The quiet balm they had begun to share was now overshadowed by the growing storm of public scrutiny, pushing them both towards an unknown precipice. Charlotte's recovery had progressed beyond Ethan's quiet expectations. The deep gash on her forehead had healed into a faint, silvery line, and the bruising that had marred her delicate features had faded, revealing the sharp, intelligent angles of her face. She moved with greater ease, her steps gaining a quiet strength that belied the ordeal she had endured. The air in Ethan's humble home, however, remained thick with an unspoken tension, a silent countdown to her inevitable departure. He watched her from across the room, tending to the fire or mending a bridle, always aware of her presence. A beautiful, enigmatic stranger who had irrevocably altered the rhythm of his solitary world. He knew this fragile peace, this unexpected companionship, was nearing its end. The whispers from the town, the speculative glances of the few visitors who dared to venture near, had only intensified. The pressure was mounting, a silent drumbeat signaling the impending return to their disparate realities. One crisp morning, as the sun painted the eastern sky with hues of rose and gold, Charlotte found Ethan preparing Ruby for a ride. She approached him, her gaze steady, a newfound resolve etched upon her features. "Ethan," she began, her voice clearer, stronger than he had ever heard it, "I am well enough to leave now." His heart clenched, a familiar ache of anticipated loss, but he simply nodded, his eyes fixed on the horse's mane. "Before I go," she continued, stepping closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "there is something you must know. Something I should have told you much sooner." He turned, his gaze meeting hers, a flicker of apprehension stirring within him. "My name is Charlotte Aldridge, and I am not just a woman from the plains, as the townspeople might speculate. I am the Charlotte Aldridge, the owner of Aldridge Industries, the woman who controls half the cattle, a quarter of the mines, and most of the land in this entire region." The words hung in the air, heavy and dense, each one a hammer blow against the quiet simplicity of his world. Ethan felt a peculiar sensation, a mix of disbelief and a strange, dawning understanding. Aldridge Industries. The name was legendary, whispered with a reverence usually reserved for deities or natural disasters. The richest, most powerful person in this corner of Texas. The woman he had found, broken and bleeding, the one he had nursed back to health in his modest home, was a titan, a force of nature in human form. The irony, the sheer, staggering impossibility of it all threatened to overwhelm him. He could only stare, his mind reeling as the full weight of her revelation settled upon him. "I understand this changes everything," Charlotte said, her voice now laced with a vulnerability he had never heard. "My disappearance has undoubtedly caused a stir. There are rivals, business associates, even distant relatives who would stop at nothing to exploit my absence, or worse, my perceived weakness. My life is complicated, Ethan. Dangerous, even. The accident was no accident. I was targeted. Someone tried to kill me." Her confession was a torrent, a dam breaking after years of carefully constructed walls. She spoke of the cutthroat world she inhabited, the constant threats, the betrayals that had become commonplace. Her eyes, usually so guarded, now held a raw, unfiltered fear, a profound weariness that went beyond her physical injuries. This was the true Charlotte, not the formidable magnate, but a woman besieged, carrying the immense burden of her empire and the constant threat it entailed. She wasn't just wealthy, she was a target, a queen on a chessboard, as she had once felt, but now bleeding and exposed. Ethan listened, his initial shock slowly giving way to a different emotion. He saw past the name, past the fortune, to the vulnerable woman before him. The world she described was a stark contrast to his own, a labyrinth of deceit and danger that he could barely comprehend. He was a simple cowboy, a man of the land, his battles fought against drought and rustlers, not corporate predators. The choice before him was stark and terrifying. He could return her to her world, to the dangers that awaited her, and retreat back into his solitude. Perhaps even be rewarded handsomely for his discretion. Or he could stand by her, a lone sentinel against the gathering storm, inviting a level of chaos into his life he had never imagined. But looking into her eyes, seeing the genuine fear mingled with a desperate hope, something shifted within him. The protective instinct that had driven him to save her from the dust storm resurfaced, stronger, more defined. This wasn't about wealth or power. It was about a human being in peril, a woman who had, against all odds, found a moment of peace and safety in his care. His past, marked by betrayals and a yearning for integrity, now called upon him to act. He could not, would not, abandon her. This revelation, devastating as it was, had stripped away the layers of assumption and societal expectation, revealing the raw, undeniable connection they had forged. It was a turning point, not just for Charlotte, but for him too. The cycle of his self-imposed isolation, the quiet dignity of his retreat, was irrevocably broken. Their individual paths, once so separate, were now inextricably intertwined, setting them on a new, uncertain journey together. The quiet cowboy and the powerful magnate, bound by a secret, a threat, and an unexpected, profound understanding. The revelation had detonated like a silent bomb across the sprawling, dusty plains, its invisible shrapnel piercing the quiet fabric of Ethan's existence. Charlotte Aldridge, the woman he had found broken and brought back from the brink, was not merely a stranger in need, but the very embodiment of the world he had consciously abandoned. Immense wealth, unparalleled influence, and a name that commanded both respect and fear across the entire region. The shockwaves rippled outwards, first through his own heart, then through the small, tightly knit community, leaving a trail of disbelief, awe, and an unsettling surge of speculation. Ethan grappled with a tempest of internal conflicts. Doubt gnawed, questioning his naive generosity, wondering if he'd invited a hurricane into his haven. Fear, a cold dread, coiled in his gut at the thought of losing his cherished independence. His simple life, once predictable, was now irrevocably altered, stretched taut across unforeseen complexities. A profound inadequacy washed over him. How could a humble cowboy, whose wealth was measured in acres and horse loyalty, truly stand beside a titan like Charlotte Aldridge? Yet, beneath the turmoil, a different current flowed. A dawning realization of a profound, emotional bond, forged in shared vulnerability. He felt a fierce, primal protectiveness towards her, a visceral need to shield her from the world she dominated and from the judgmental whispers already slithering through town. The shame of being scrutinized, his good intentions twisted into opportunistic schemes, was a heavy burden on his honest soul. Charlotte, for her part, watched the unfolding drama with a practiced, weary eye. Her life had always been under public scrutiny, but seeing the raw impact on Ethan's pristine world was a new pain. His quiet strength had been her anchor, and now her reality threatened to drown him. She felt a surge of guilt for the disruption, even as a quiet hope stirred within her for the first time in years, that perhaps this man, untouched by her world's corruptions, could be an ally, a partner, or something more profound. Allies, surprisingly, emerged from unexpected corners. Old Silas, the weathered ranch hand, a man of few words but profound wisdom, offered a gruff nod. "Some folks see gold, Ethan," he rasped. "Others see a soul. You got a good eye." Mrs. Gable, a kindly widow from the nearest homestead, brought pie, her eyes holding genuine concern. "Don't you mind the chatter, Ethan. You did right by that woman." Their quiet support, a testament to Ethan's unwavering character, became small beacons in the growing storm. But where immense wealth resided, opportunists and adversaries inevitably followed. Charlotte's business rivals, sensing weakness, made veiled inquiries, thinly disguised attempts to exploit her absence. Jealous townsfolk, fueled by envy, contrasting Ethan's humble life with Charlotte's fortune, spread malicious rumors, painting him as a calculating fortune hunter, her a manipulative enchantress. The whispers grew louder, bolder, suggesting their accident was a ruse, a scandalous affair, or a desperate escape. The cultural dynamics of the Texas community were on full display: rugged independence, deep conservatism, and a reverent respect for success, yet coupled with suspicion of anything deviating from the established order. Charlotte's presence and her growing connection with Ethan profoundly challenged every social norm, every preconceived notion of wealth and class. The psychological impact on both was profound. Ethan, unused to public scrutiny, felt his private world invaded, his very integrity questioned, forcing him to navigate a new reality fraught with emotional complexity. Charlotte, accustomed to battles, found herself fighting not just for her vast empire, but for the very soul of the man who had saved her, and for the fragile, unexpected bond that had blossomed between them. Their journey together had just begun. The path ahead was undoubtedly riddled with external pressures and intense internal struggles that threatened to consume them both. The storm of speculation and malicious gossip, however, had profoundly underestimated Charlotte Aldridge's formidable resilience and Ethan Maddox's quiet, unshakable integrity. The initial shockwaves subsided, giving way to Charlotte's calculated, strategic response. She had spent a lifetime building her empire and was not about to let whispers or opportunistic rivals dismantle it, nor tarnish the man who had offered her sanctuary. With strength fully returned, Charlotte convened a meeting, not in a sterile boardroom, but at Ethan's ranch, a deliberate act of transparency. She faced her business associates and community leaders head-on, her gaze unwavering, her voice resonating with authority. She laid bare the details of her accident, her severe injuries, and Ethan's selfless bravery, dispelling sordid rumors. More than that, she announced significant investments into local infrastructure, a new community center, and educational programs, all funded by the Aldridge Corporation, directly benefiting the townsfolk who had gossiped. This profound generosity, coupled with her dignified honesty, powerfully shifted public perception. The narrative of the calculating enchantress and fortune hunter crumbled, replaced by the story of a powerful woman and the noble cowboy who saved her, now working together for their shared world's betterment. Ethan, for his part, found a new sense of purpose that enriched his cherished independence. He wasn't consumed by Charlotte's world. Instead, he brought his grounded wisdom and quiet strength into it. He became her trusted advisor, not on corporate mergers, but on character, understanding the land and its people. and the true value of honest work. His ranch, once a refuge, now became a place where their different lives converged, a sanctuary where they shed public personas. He learned true partnership wasn't about losing oneself, but finding a deeper version of himself, alongside someone who truly saw him, beyond the dusty hat. Their bond wasn't a whirlwind romance of grand gestures, but a realistic human connection, forged in shared vulnerability and mutual respect. It was built on early morning coffees on the porch, quiet conversations about the future, and unspoken understandings. Charlotte found in Ethan not just a rescuer, but a confidant, a steady presence who saw past her immense wealth and reputation to the woman beneath, weary from solitary battle. He offered her a peace she hadn't known was possible, a genuine connection that healed her past betrayals. Ethan, in turn, found in Charlotte a partner who challenged his solitude, expanding his horizons, proving connection didn't equate to vulnerability, but to unparalleled strength. Their journey had transformed them both, weaving their disparate lives into a tapestry of shared experiences and unwavering support. Ethan's past solitude, once a protective shell, became a foundation for a rich, shared existence. Charlotte's guarded heart, hardened by ambition, finally found a safe harbor. They had navigated societal judgments, overcome past burdens, and emerged not as separate entities, but as a formidable, compassionate unit. They found strength and belonging in the most unexpected circumstances, proving home was not a place defined by property or bank accounts, but a profound resonance found in another.